I'm really excited about tonight's movie because if you haven't seen it, you won't forget it. Day of the Outlaw, made in 1959. It was based on a 1955 story by Lee Irwin Wills, and it was directed by the great Andre de Toth, who directed Crime Wave that you saw this morning, and Pitfall, and many other terrific films. And the cast list is really a hall of fame. Robert Ryan, Burl Ives, Tina Louise, Alan Marcia, Vanita Stevenson, David Nelson, Nikki Persoff, and so on. When you say something about someone he knows or worked with everyone, I think it applies to Mike McGreevey, who's our special guest. Mike's career started in the 50s when he was 8 years old in The Girl Most Likely with Jane Powell. He has worked with Alan Ladd, Michael Curtiz, Robert Mitchum, Kirk Douglas, just about everybody. 18 feature films in 20 years, TV, Naked City, Riverboat, movies, The Way West, The Impossible Years with David Niven, Death of a Gunfighter with Dick Widmark and Lena Horne, the Disney movies. He also went behind the camera with a 3-hour acclaimed TV movie, Ruby and Oswald, that he's rightly proud about, writing for the Waltons, and he also ended up producing and being the showrunner for the TV series Fame, based on the movie. So Mike has done it all and is a great raconteur, and particularly about this movie that was filmed up in Bend, Oregon. And this is not just another Western. This is definitely noir-stained all the way, because what would you expect with Robert Ryan? And I know you're really going to enjoy the conversation following it with the great Mike McGreevey. Was it as cold as it looked there?
Yeah, it really was. It was the winter of '58 in Bend, outside Bend, Oregon, on a place called Dutchman Flats. And I was 10 years old, and I'm the only one that was happy about being in the snow because I was a kid from Southern California.
Right.
And it was fun for me. Everybody else, of course, hated it.
Yeah. Patrick Francis told me that everyone was going to Andre de Toth and complaining about the cold. And he showed up one day on the set with no shirt on going, "It's not cold. It's not." Is that true? Is that true?
Yeah. The whole day. De Toth was that kind of guy. And I adored him, because he was very sweet to me, but he was a sort of a scary guy because he had an eye patch.
Right.
And he had that heavy Hungarian accent.
Right.
I had done a movie with Michael Curtiz just before this, so I thought every film director was a Hungarian bald guy.
Yeah, that yelled.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I talked with Patrick Francis, who spent a lot of time with Andre, and I met Andre once and asked him, how many people saw Crime Wave this morning? And I asked him about the crazy actor in that, and I said, was he really like that? And he said, what you see is what you get. But did you have to audition for him, or how did you get the part?
Yeah, no, for some reason I didn't. I didn't have to read. Well, I only had a few lines in the movie, so it wasn't a matter. I think he was looking for more of a look, and watching it now, he wanted an attentive actor for the kid part.
Right.
And I could do that. And at that point, I was starting to learn to sort of pay attention in a scene.
Right.
And but I don't think I might have, I had meetings with him, I remember, but I don't think I actually had to do a scene or a reading or any of that. So.
And the location itself, where did you guys stay? Obviously, you didn't stay in the general store on that.
We were about 45 minutes out in Bend, Oregon,
right,
at the Bend Inn.
Oh, yeah.
Which was
5-star hotel.
Yeah, it was ancient even then.
Yeah.
And everybody stayed there except Mr. Ryan. And Burl stayed there because I've told you the story about there was an elevator in this hotel that was ancient too. And my mom, who was a little overweight herself, we got in the elevator one night to go up to the third floor. And before the door closed, Burl Ives stepped in. And we pushed the button and we went. And Mr. Ives graciously stepped out of the elevator and said, "Pardon the extra pounds, madam." And he sent us up. But everybody stayed, except Ryan, I think, stayed in the hotel. And it was a good group of people.
Well, the actors, I mean, it's kind of a hall of fame of character actors, some of which you knew, like Cookie, Elisha Cook Jr. What was the Cookie experience?
Cookie, we found out Cookie was only there, he only took the part because he could fish. He wanted to ice fish. And every time they'd say, "Where's Cookie?" And he'd be off fishing. Yeah, because it was a very small part for him.
Yeah, he had a couple scenes, that was it.
But he later, he was good friends with Robert Preston, and my mom was very good friends with Press and his wife. And Press said, "Oh yeah, Cookie, fishing is more important to Cookie than anything in life."
Well, he lived up in the mountains in Bishop, and he was a fisherman. And I heard the story. Lawrence Tierney went up, and they both went deer hunting together, which would scare the hell out of anybody. And so when he had a job, he'd go down to L.A., and then when he drove back home, he would hit like every bar up along the way on the roadhouse on the way back up to Bishop.
Sounds like the two of them.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. Definitely.
The whole cast was Jack Lambert, who I've never seen it on the big screen.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad we were able to do this. Jack Lambert looked like he was just odious. He was odious in most every film.
Well, he always played the bad guy.
Yeah.
And he was the sweetest man. He became Uncle Jack for me because we later did a TV series together called Riverboat. And I found that out with all the Lance Fuller,
Charles McGraw,
all the bad guys that I worked with over the years were the nicest people on camera. And Nicky Persoff.
Nicky was.
I got to work with him many times after that.
I got to know him late in his life, and I'd get on the phone with him, and he was just a sweetheart and a great artist as well.
He turned out to be Dabbs Greer, who went on to be in a million things.
Yeah, Bill Shallert was there.
One moment he didn't even have a line.
I had to kind of look and go, that guy, that Bill Shallert. And
I remember him being up because I worked with Bill later a lot, and I remember my favorite day on the movie was. The scene with Venetia Stevenson, who played my...
And she was, I believe, Anna Lee's daughter and Robert Stevenson, the director's
daughter.
Yeah.
And she was beautiful. Right. And I got to spend the whole day hugging her.
You weren't complaining
even
at age 10.
No, and I think the whole crew would have liked to have been doing it because she was gorgeous and really sweet. David Nelson, of course. The first night we were in Bend, we all wanted to go to sleep, and then we were awakened by a bunch of young girls outside the hotel screaming, "Ricky, we love you, Ricky."
They thought David's brother was...
Well, actually, Ricky had come up, and I always thought he came up to visit David.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out that he, on their TV show, Venetia Stevenson was his first girlfriend on the show.
I did not know that.
I didn't know it either.
Yeah, I did not know
and so I think Ricky he came up to visit David, but to be around Venetia.
Yeah. And the production behind it is pretty interesting. Andre de Toth was a pilot, and he actually flew up there way before and picked out all the locations, told them where he wanted the town built. And then he wanted the town to age and look weathered when the winter came. And then he came up and he found that the sets were all built the wrong way. They weren't facing the mountain. So he said, tear it all down and build it over again.
That's exactly what happened. He flew back in and saw that it was wrong for him. Now, knowing what I know about him and the frames that, gorgeous frames, he had planned everything.
Right.
So with the buildings not being in the right place,
it threw it all off.
Yeah,
it threw it all off.
I was fascinated watching. I remember at the time thinking, he's choreographing me. How you would move into like the window frame.
Right.
And at a point he would go, move, Mike. And I'd move to the next window to look up.
Right.
Everything,
visually he had it all in his head on what he wanted.
And you had to hit your marks because he'd have 8 people in a shot, if you see.
Yeah.
And everybody was clear.
Mm-hmm.
So you could see their reaction, but he was a stickler for people hitting their marks.
Right. Right. He had it all planned. Well, you had mentioned that before this movie you had made The Man in the Net with Mike Curtiz, and that was not a great experience.
No, he was not the sweet, kind Andre to Toth with me. I was terrified of Mike Curtiz, and it was very strange about it all. Obviously, you know all about Michael Curtiz. It's a great book. Of the 5 kids on that movie, I'm the only one that really had a memory of him being scary.
Right.
And maybe it was just me, and you were saying to me that, and your book actually helped me. He was not at his best.
No, he was ill and he was old and he hadn't made a lot of good pictures and he didn't know what else to do with himself.
He seemed very grouchy all the time.
Yeah.
And I had to cry in a scene, and I was terrified because the tears didn't come.
Right.
And
didn't Charlie help you?
Charles McGraw took me aside and said, it's okay, you can do this, use this, he said.
Use the fear.
Yeah. Because I said, I'm scared of Mr. Curtiz. He said, well, use that.
Yeah.
And it looks okay on film.
Yeah, I mean, it does look okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the picture isn't the greatest picture. I guess Curtiz liked Carolyn Jones.
This is a great picture.
Yeah, this is a good picture. So when you went from this, then was Riverboat shortly thereafter?
Yeah, I think in terms, probably. I did an awful lot of television and ended up on Riverboat for a season and a half.
But Riverboat, you had 2 stars. You had Darren McGavern and you had the young Burt Reynolds. And what was the relationship not only with you, but between those 2?
Yeah, well, I loved them both. Burt Reynolds was about 23. He had just started. It was one of the first things he ever did. And he had been a football player at Florida State. And I just thought he was my big brother. I didn't have a big brother. And I adored him. And he bought me a football and taught me how to throw the football and all that stuff on the sets. Darren was like a father figure. And I adored him, too. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately,
they didn't adore one another.
They hated each other, which was very traumatic for me. The story that Burt always told, he got fired off it, and he always said that he got fired because he couldn't act, that he wasn't a good enough actor. Mm-hmm. The true story is he and Darren, we were on the back lot at Universal on the Riverboat.
And that's the famous lake of Gilligan's Island and McHale's Navy. And they got into a disagreement. And suddenly Burt picked Darren up and threw him in the lake. And we always debated how deep the lake was. It came up about here on Darren. And the next day, Burt was gone. Wow.
Yeah. The story that everybody tells, when Burt was fired and he was going back to his car, he ran into another contract player. Mm-hmm. And the contract player said, "What's going on?" He goes, I just got let go. And the contract player said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, they said I can't act." That was it.
Yeah, that was the story.
And the other contract player said, "Well, they just let me go too." And Burt said, "Why?" And he said, "They think my Adam's apple is too big." It was Clint Eastwood. Universal fired Clint Eastwood and Burt Reynolds on the same day.
Oh, God.
Jesus. Isn't that a classic?
That's classic.
Yeah.
That's classic.
Like Burt had the line, I don't know if it was true, when he would tell a story, he said to Clint, "Well, at least I can get acting lessons."
Now, Mike and I did a thing, I think it was last year, some months ago. You were in you were in a Naked City episode.
Yeah.
That UCLA showed at the Billy Wilder, and it was really a two-man show with you and Jack Warden, who played a not so great either escaped convict or
He was a bad guy.
Yeah, he was a bad guy, and you were in this really rundown building, looked like it was filmed in the Lower East Side in New York.
It was, really in a bad neighborhood.
Yeah. And what was the experience with Jack Warden, who is a great actor that everyone loves?
Again, Jack didn't always play bad guys, but he was just wonderful to work with. It was, again, instant, like we were talking about Darren McGavin. One of the things about actors, I had instant rapport with Darren, and I had the same experience with Jack. And we had, tons of scenes together. You're right, it was just the two of us to carry this whole hour.
Yeah.
And
it was good, too. Both of you were good.
Thank you. But he was wonderful, and he saved my life. We were down in this very bad section on the edge of the Bowery, I think it was, shooting, and I was walking back to the trailers, I think for a wardrobe change or something. And some street guy just picked me, I was a little kid, just picked me up and started running off with me. And thank God, Jack came out of his trailer and saw this and ran after it and grabbed the guy and pulled me away. So I don't know what this guy was going to do.
It probably wasn't an audition.
It wasn't going to be good. So that was, I think, the first day on the shoot. So that was a nice bonding thing for us.
Of course.
He saved my life.
One of the other things we talked about, we had Barry Chase at the top talking about working with Robert Mitchum.
Yeah, I love
in
that.
Cape Fear, and of course you got a double header in the Way West. You got Robert Mitchum and you got Kirk Douglas in the same movies.
And Richard Widmark.
And Richard Widmark. Wow.
And Sally Field.
And Sally
in her first movie.
Yeah. What was that experience like?
Sally Field or?
Whatever you want to talk about, Mike.
I was in love with Sally, but anybody would have done that. But it was fascinating working with Mitchum. Kirk Douglas was very nice to me. At the time, Kirk Douglas was a little bit of a superstar in his own mind. And in fact, Robert Mitchum at one point said to somebody that they were looking at the dailies, and they had done a lot of work with Mitchum, and they said, "Mitch, you're underplaying everything. Why are you underplaying this all?" Mm-hmm. And Mitchum said, "Well, brother Kirk is doing enough acting for all of us."
Well, Kirk, when we ran a piece of the interview that Patrick and I did with him in 2010, and he had a poster in his office of the Vikings there. And I said, I knew Dick Fleischer and talked to him, and he goes, "What'd he say about me?" and I said, "Well, truthfully, Kirk," I said, "you don't make movies with Kirk Douglas, you survive them." And he said, "That's damn true."
Well, I must say, years later, he had the stroke.
Right.
I ran into him, and he said, he was very gracious. He remembered me.
He was really nice to me.
Yeah.
Very gracious.
And he said, I was a real prick on that movie. And I said, yeah, I think you were. Yeah. But I had most of my scenes were with Mitchum, and that's where I really, I just adored the guy.
Yeah.
The most unusual human being I've ever met in my life. Total, a series of contradictions, I would say.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Really professional as an actor, and
Photographic memory too.
and the lyrics.
Yeah.
He would come in and say, "What are the lyrics today?" And he'd look at them once, and I hated him for it. He was a lot of fun to be around, and he sort of took me under his wing and corrupted me. I was
How did he corrupt you?
18 years old.
Yeah.
Well, in a lot of ways, one night I went out to dinner with him. He said, "Come on." He called me Haas. I don't know why. Maybe he thought I was Haas Conrad or something. But he said, "Come on, Haas, let's go out to dinner." And he had a Porsche, and we went, had dinner in this place in Bend, Oregon. And we came out, and some drunk guy came up and said, "Robert Mitchum, you think you're a tough guy." All
That happened to him a lot.
Yeah. And he just said, "Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm a wimp. I'm a jerk."
Yeah.
Who likes Robert? He tried everything with this guy to try to disarm him. And then, just suddenly, he nails this guy. I'm an 18-year-old. He went down, and Bob said, Get in the car. And we got in the Porsche and drove off. And I never told anybody this story. And years later, I said something to his niece, Cindy Mitchum, about that incident. And I'd always thought, they were going to mess with Bob Mitchum.
Yeah.
And she said, "He did that to protect you, Mike."
Yeah.
And that was exactly what he did. And like I said, the contradictions of this guy, he was a brawler. He was
He was a tough guy.
But, and of course, I did have my first marijuana experience with Bob.
Was it good stuff?
He had somebody roll them. He had like a tin thing, a cigarette holder, like the fancy old,
Right,
yeah,
right.
And they were marijuana cigarettes.
Yeah.
And anyhow, I came home and made the mistake of telling my parents that. They said, how is everything? And I said, "Well, I smoked dope with Robert Mitchum." And my dad, oh God, he was so angry with me. He said, "I don't want to ever hear you tell me anything like that again.
Ruin your career.
You're really blah, blah, blah. No son of mine would do that." Years later, my dad would tell people, "Mike smoked marijuana with Robert Mitchum." Like he was proud of it. So changing times.
Yeah. What was Widmark like? I know he was kind of a very shy, reserved, very totally professional, but
Yeah.
certainly wasn't like Mitchum.
He played my father in that one, and I got along really well with Dick. And I did another movie with him later, Death of a Gunfighter. I think Widmark was probably, influence-wise, taught me more about acting than anybody.
Really?
Somebody asked me recently in a podcast or something, they said, who was the most influential, or who were the best actors you worked with? I worked with a lot of good actors, obviously. And I said Widmark and Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
Who was a dear friend. But Widmark had a tin ear.
Yeah.
And I thought he hated me the first 2 days on the movie. We were on mules together doing these establishing shots. And I tried to strike up a conversation, and he ignored me. And I called my mother and said, "I don't think Mr. Widmark likes me." And she said, "Well, don't make waves, be
nice."
And so I was, and the third morning, I got on the mule next to him, and he turned and said, "Hi, Mike, how are you? Did you have a good night or something?" And I went, and he said, what's the matter? And I said, I thought you didn't like me. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I've been trying to talk to you for 2 days. He said, I can't hear a damn thing out of this ear. He said, so Dick Widmark and I always go. He was misunderstood in terms of, he was very shy. And I think shy people come off sometimes
Standoffish.
Yeah. And once he got comfortable with you, he was terrific.
Yeah. Well, I remember there was an interview, and he did Two Rode Together with Jimmy Stewart and Jack Ford and him, and he said, I had a tin ear in one ear. Jack Ford couldn't hear out of one of his ears, and Stewart couldn't hear out of both his ears. So the whole movie was, what?
It was the what movie?
The what movie, yeah, that's what he called it. He would call it. So, Mike, you made the transition, the acting into first writing and writing screenplays. Yeah. Was that because the acting dried up, or was it a natural kind of progression through your career? How did that?
It was a combination of things. I think my dad was a writer, so I always sort of aspired to follow a little bit in his footsteps. But also, I got very typed as an actor. I did all these movies at Disney.
Right.
And in those days, you didn't break out of that. It was like, he's just a Disney actor. And I had done nothing but drama until I went over to Disney, where I did a lot of comedy. And then suddenly I was only a comic Disney actor.
Right.
But I had gone to UCLA Film School and had started writing, actually with Kurt Russell, when we were roommates. And I used my dad's contacts and some of my own, and I started writing and selling television scripts. Yeah, and ended up, as you said, doing the Waltons and a whole bunch of freelance stuff and some TV movies and Fame.
Yeah, Fame. How did Fame fall to you, or how did you
one of those it's sort of similar to Jim Beaver's story about being in the office and someone saying, pointing at ends.
Yeah, you do this.
Yeah. I had a friend named Chris Beaumont, whose father was Charles Beaumont, very famous writer too. And Chris had become the story editor on the first season of Fame. With William Blinn was the showrunner. And I ran into Chris. I was coming out of a meeting that I'd had with Michael Landon for a show called Father Murphy. And I ran into Chris, and Chris said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to do this for Michael, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm doing Fame. Well, I started as a dancer. I mean, that's where my love was. I wanted to be Gene Kelly. And I said, oh, God, I would love to do one of your episodes. And sure enough, he went back, told Bill Blinn, and I went in and pitched a story, and I did my first one of freelance, and then came on the show and did three and a half seasons, and wrote, I think, 15 shows.
Yeah,
and produced.
Good for you. Yeah, I remember recently I posted something on social media about Dick Powell, and it turns out your dad, I mean, you've had this unbelievable career in terms of that, and your dad had a career from the very beginnings of television.
Yeah, he came out, he started in New York in radio, and then moved into television in New York, and then everything moved out to the West Coast. That's when we moved out here. And he was in the golden age, and he was an Emmy Award-winning writer for the Waltons, and had 38 TV movies made. I'm still a record, and has the most credits in the Writers Guild still to this day.
That's impressive.
Yeah, over 300 credits.
And you did that Ruby and Oswald
with
him, and I remember watching that. That was really good.
Yeah, it was good.
That was. No, I'm not just saying that. Yeah. You should be. You should. Yeah, it was really good.
And I know Oswald acted alone. I know anyone wants to hear that, but
Yeah.
I spent almost a year
Doing the research on it. Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
CBS wanted me to find something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
afraid not.
So, as you look back and you see this movie tonight, what do you come up with? I'm a lucky guy, or
Well, yeah, I had an opportunity to work with those marvelous people, and be in something so classic,
Right.
and I have so much fun doing it too.
yeah. Do you, when you look back, do you have a favorite part or a favorite role? Or I know that's kind of a fan type question, but
Yeah, no, actually, there's several. There's. I think I like the ones where I had a chance to be,
a character.
yeah, that I had the Naked City episode.
Right.
I had so much to.
Yeah, it's so much
work with.
business. Yeah.
I had done a Route 66 with Ed Asner played my father in it, and he gets killed in the first act. Poor Ed. And it just gave me a lot to work with. It was
Right.
my show.
Mhm.
I mean, so I don't think I have a favorite. I watched Death of a Gunfighter. I hadn't watched it in 30 years. They came out with a Blu-ray. And
Yeah. Because now, was that the one Don Siegel directed, and he
replaced
replaced
Robert
somebody, and he put the Alan Smithy name on the credits because he didn't want to take
It's
somebody
the
else's
first
credit.
Alan Smithy movie.
Yeah.
Alan Smithy is
The mythical
a
person.
mythical director,
Yeah.
but it's the best Alan Smithy movie.
Yeah, that's probably true. And I think didn't Lena Horne play Widmark's wife in that, or
Lena.
his girlfriend?
Yeah. It's actually, with all the trouble we had on the production, with the first director being fired, Dick Widmark just, I don't know, he just couldn't get along with this guy. The guy was really good, I thought. Robert Totten was his name. And Siegel came in and cleaned it up the last 3 or 4 weeks, I guess. And like I said, I hadn't seen it in years. And I got the Blu-ray with the new commentary on, and it's really pretty good Western. And I was sort of impressed with my performance. So, I think when you get distance from the stuff,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure.
I mean, some of the stuff I can't watch.
Well, I tell
It's
you what,
hard to
Mike,
watch yourself.
in the pantheon of
I
guests,
thought I was cute in this.
You were very cute, very cute. I like the little tear. Was the tear genuine?
Totally.
Totally. Wow.
You just
Yeah.
see me wipe it away?
Yeah. Well, you know what Joan Crawford said one time when they said, you need to cry in this scene? She said, which eye? Any rate, with that, Mike, it's been a
Yeah.
pleasure. I love you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Mike McGreevey, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.